On today's installment of Meet the Machines, I'm going to introduce you guys to my new little friend, the Friedman JEL-20. Hey there kids, it's your good buddy Uncle Ben, and welcome to a brand new installment of Meet the Machines, the gear series for people who like things that are nice. I like things that are nice. And on today's video, we're going to be talking about something very nice indeed, the new Friedman JEL-20, which is the little brother to the Jake E. Lee signature amp that they've had here for a while. It's an all-tube powered 20-watt head with 2 channels. It's powered by 2 EL84 tubes, and the preamp section is 3 12AX7s with a lot of gain on tap. It's everything you need and nothing you don't if you love the classic sounds of those British black and gold amplifiers, wink wink, that we've all listened to our entire lives. And it is more than loud enough to keep up with your rock show volume. I know a lot of us think that you have to have like a 100-watt head in order to play a rock or metal gig, and that's ridiculous. It's 20 watts and it is more than loud enough. Full disclosure, Friedman sent me this amp to check out because they know I love their amps and I also love Jake E. Lee's playing. But they're not paying me to make this video. I told them the same thing I tell every other company: send me the product, let me check it out. If it's something that I'm actually going to use live and in the studio, then I'll hang on to it and make a video about it. If not, I'll send it right back and we'll never speak of it again. But obviously, since you're watching this video, that means that this thing has a permanent home here. I've not gigged it yet, but I absolutely will, and it's also going to be an amazing backup amp for my Friedman BE100, which is one of my main amps that I use live. In this video, I'm going to show you guys the various tones we can get out of the 2 channels and all the switches and EQs and stuff. And if you listen closely, you may hear the pitter-patter of raindrops on my windowsill here in Tennessee, but don't worry about that. It's going to get loud here in a second. Some gear details for this video. I'm playing my Suhr Modern Satin right here. I've got that running into my pedal board here on the floor, which has an ISP Noise Decimator 2 running into the effects loop of the amp. I live in a building with really noisy power, so I've always got to have a gate on basically everything. I've got a couple of boost pedals that I'll talk about as I go along here, and I'm running the amp into the Universal Audio aux as usual. Any delay or reverb that you hear is going to be added in post in Logic. And yes, these are my real knees. Okay, 2-channel amp. Channel number 1 is where we're going to start. This is the Plexi channel. And it reminds me a lot of like a 100-watt Plexi, where you can really go from nice, sparkly, clean tones that can also be a great pedal platform. And then as you wind the gain up, it can get pretty dirty into like AC/DC kind of territory. Really regal and polished clean tones. And right now I have my EQ set basically at noon. I have the bass more like at 1 o'clock. And the gain is also at about 1 o'clock right now. As you turn that gain down, it gets even more shimmery and clean. Sounds especially good with like those single coil settings. legit great sounding clean channel. Usually I find with amps that have like super high gain tones on tap, like this can, the clean channel is just kind of an afterthought. And it's like, well, this is for the soft part of the song. It'll do. Anyway, back to the high gain kind of thing. But I could totally go and play one of those like yacht rock gigs that I do on just a clean channel on this amp. It really sounds fantastic. So it has a 3-position bright switch on here that you can use to make it a little bit more clear and bell-like, or tone it down a little bit, maybe if you're in like a bright sounding room. I'll just kind of go through the different positions here. I've had it in the middle position, which I guess is kind of neutral, but you can hear a little bit of a difference as I cycle through the different settings here. Let's hear what that sounds like. I'll start with it in the first position. And that bright switch only affects channel number 1. It's not going to change how your lead tones sound on channel 2 when it's like melt your face off solo time. So the cool thing is you can set up your 2 channels here to be like the cleanest of the clean to the dirtiest of the dirty. Kind of like my honeymoon. Now, as we wind up the gain here on channel 1, this is where we get more into that classic Plexi tone kind of territory. Let me push it over here into like the 3 o'clock kind of range. Now let's go ahead and wind it up all the way and hear what that sounds like. Killer classic rock tones, and at manageable volume too. I have a 50-watt Plexi, and I love it. It's an amazing sounding amp, but it is so ungodly loud. It's like uncontrollably loud. But it's really great to be able to get those Plexi tones out of this thing at a volume that's actually reasonable. And again, I have the master volume right now at like noon, which if I wasn't running through the aux would be pretty freaking loud. But the awesome thing about Friedman amps is they make these things so that they sound great even at bedroom volumes. It's not going to be one of those amps that you can only really enjoy if you're on stage, you know, blasting at stun volume. They really do sound great at all volumes across the board. Yeah, so that sounds pretty freaking awesome. That's straight into the amp, no pedals or anything out front. Really sounds killer. So channel 2 is the JEL, Jake Lee channel, and it's a lot more like an 800 kind of sound. You can hear it still has that like kind of dumpy low end on it. It's got a little fat on the edges, which I'm totally okay with. And this is cool too, because that's not typically something you have with a lot of Friedman amps, like my BE100 for example. So the way I always think about Friedmans is they're kind of like the sound of those classic black and gold British amps that we all love. It's kind of like that sound with like let's say the 1980s Playboy airbrush treatment on it, you know? Whereas this amp is a little bit closer to the source material. I think if you zoomed in on the tone, you could still see the stubble, so to speak. So this is a little bit more raw, it's a little bit more dumpy. It's kind of like more EQ on both sides of the spectrum than what my BE100 does. That is just great rock and roll tone right there. So the cool thing is with that, slightly fat bottom end that you have on there, with the gain all the way, actually I don't even have the gain up all the way. That was with the gain only on half. Awesome. So with the gain where it is, and the low end sitting the way that it is, it's a perfect opportunity to boost it up. I've got a Boss SD1 right here on the floor. It's going to give it just a little bit more gain on top and also tame a little bit of that low end. This is going to put us in like perfect 80s hard rock territory, which is kind of where I like to live. So we've also got the saturation switch. Saturation. So we've also got the saturation switch. God damn, that is hard to say. Saturation switch. I've got it up right now, and if you turn it down, it'll take away a little bit of the gain and stuff, but also put a little bit of a hole in the mids. Check this out. Here's how it sounds with the saturation off. And now I'll turn it up. So you can hear with it down, it's like a little smoother and darker sounding. Definitely scoops those mids out a little bit. And with it up, it's a bit more in your face, a little bit more present. I like it better with the saturation up, and that does affect both channels, but I would probably leave it there anyway, unless I was just on some kind of stage where it was like really honky sounding or something. Again, nice to have that there if you need it. There's also a presence control on the back. I actually didn't even know that until like right now when I started making this video. I've always got it set at noon anyway, but again, you can globally affect the presence on both channels depending on the room that you're playing in, which is definitely a nice feature to have. So one thing I want to show you guys here about the second channel, the JEL channel, is not only does it do this awesome 800 kind of thing really well, but the gain knob on this has a push-pull kind of thing. And if you yank on it, it goes from like the gain going to 11 to the gain going to like 20. It's more like a boosted 800, kind of like the sound of what I had a second ago with the SD1 in front. It can kind of do that on its own, which is freaking rad. Let me put the gain at noon right here. I'm going to play it with it in, and then I'm going to pull it out so you can hear the difference that it makes. God, that sounds good. Just classic British ass tone, which is what I like, but in an American amp. Isn't that lovely? So you'll notice that it still retains like good clarity even with all that gain. Which is something I've always found that Friedman amps do amazingly well. Just that good string to string definition, where when you hit a chord you can hear what every string is doing. And it has that nice kind of jangly, I don't know, stringy kind of sound that I really love to hear in high gain amps. It's not just sort of a gained out mush kind of tone. Super dynamic too, even with all that gain. Kind of clicking the noise gate on and off here. Even with all that gain, you can still roll back your volume, go to your neck pickup, and get a pretty damn good clean tone out of it too. Very shocking to see with a amp that has this much gain on tap. So right now I have the gain pulled for extra, because more is more. Let's go ahead and crank it all the way up and hear what that sounds like. It gets pretty brutal, but again, really nice and clear and clean the whole time too. Let's check this out. Got that grind, you know? And if you boost it, like with my SD1 here, it gets even more brutal. Yeah, just raging filth, just the way that I like it. And again, I can go from that to channel number 1 on a foot switch or whatever and just get this beautiful morning after rainstorm sound. Switch the channel over to channel 2 and Everything that you need, nothing that you don't. It's worth mentioning too that the EQ section is really powerful. This whole time I've had the treble control at like noon, but if you cut it down to like 9 o'clock, you can get a way more fat and woolly kind of sound out of it, but it still sounds clear. If you put it back at noon, that's where we were. And if you turn it up past that to like 3 o'clock, it temporarily makes you forget how to play the riff that you were playing. You can hear that also kind of moves the mid-range around a little bit too. It sounds like that kind of carves out a little bit of low mids in there. So it's not just affecting the high end, it really is shaping the tone of the amp. Let's do the same thing with the mids here. Again, here it is at noon. Let's turn it down here to about 9 o'clock. Really nice sounding still. Let's turn it all the way up to like 9 o'clock here. I actually really like that sound a lot. It's a little bit more present in the mix too. Let's go ahead and max it out and see what that does. Yeah, that still sounds awesome even with the mids maxed out like that. That'll cut through a mix really well. And the bass control can do a lot. That's something I love about Friedman amps. I always have enough bass on tap that even when you're playing at low volumes, it'll still sound huge. Like I'd never run my bass maxed out in a live mix, but playing by yourself at home, it sounds and feels so good. So again, I've had this a little bit over noon this whole time. Let's back it down here to like, yeah, let's do 9 o'clock again. Way less dumpy on the low end, a little bit tighter sounding. Probably sounds really good on like the fast picked stuff. Kind of does. Let's see if I can do that last bend again. There it is. Okay, so that sounds really good. Back up to noon here. And now let's bump it up to like 9 o'clock. And then let's max it out just for the fun of it. Still one of my favorite riffs ever. Yeah, even with bass maxed out, it still has that clarity. It still sounds really good. And that's all been with the gain like maxed out. So very, very impressive the amount of sounds you can get out of this thing. So there you go, guys. The compact, versatile, and uber handsome Friedman JEL-20. Really loving this amp. I'm going to use it on all kinds of stuff because it has so many different tones on tap. I think especially if you're a player like myself who likes to dabble in a lot of different genres and needs access to a ton of different sounds, this is an amazing amp to get for that. Between the 2 channels, the push-pull gain, the bright switch, the saturation, and the really flexible EQ, there's not really a ton you can't do with this. I would totally feel comfortable bringing this to basically any gig that I play, whether it be funky stuff, yacht rock cleans, the hair metal high gain kind of thing, this would be a great amp to do a little bit of all of it. And it won't break my back in the process, which is a huge plus for my aging frame. Let me know any questions that you have about this thing down in the comments section, and I'll be happy to get back to you and encourage you to snag one of these for yourself. Thank you guys so much for watching. Huge thanks to Friedman Amps for sending me this bad boy to scope out. And if you guys want to get access to a ton of bonus goodies, backing tracks, extra videos, and more, be sure to sign up today to my Patreon page, patreon.com/Ben Eller Guitars. Also be sure to give me a follow on the Instagram at Ben Eller Guitars. Be sure to let me know in the comments section what piece of gear you'd like to see featured on the next installment of Meet the Machines. Now let's go shred some guitar. Less clicking, more picking.